Capstone Assignment 1. A drought is a dry spell in a specific place. There are 3 different types of drought that can occur. According to the 4th National Climate Assessment, Volume 1, the 3 types of drought that can occur are meteorological drought, agricultural drought, and hydrological drought. The threat of all 3 of these different types of drought are significantly dangerous. The potential threat of water shortages can affect specific places in many ways, such as stunting the growth of agriculture, lowering water levels for a decrease in transportation, and causing wildfires. Today, a major drought exists in a small city in Australia, Murrurundi. Murrurundi is susceptible to drought because of its location and rainfall. It is in a subtropical region, which results in dry air and little rainfall. The El Niño weather pattern also impacts the forecast and change in the environment. Murrurundi is one of many towns in Australia running out of drinking water. Fields and trees are dead. Climate change is a well-known issue among inhabitants of this small, dry Australian town. According to a CNN article, the drought affects farm life such as cattle. It also affects people. In order to conserve water, one woman admits to bathing her 2 children together every week. Transportation is made more difficult and water quality is also affected. Solutions to Murrurundi's drought may be gradual and not developed overnight. People can also try to limit their water use and minimize waste in their communities. Capstone Assignment 2. The global climate change of the Arctic region has affected many people and places in the world. It has taken a heavy toll on Alaska and other parts of the Arctic Ocean. A particular region that has been affected by Arctic climate change is Nunavut, the northernmost territory in Canada. The potential threat of Arctic climate change due to excessive melting of glacier ice can affect sea surface levels, the salinity of the ocean, and the circulation of oceans. Nunavut is highly susceptible to glacier retreat and sea ice thinning due to its location. There is a significant amount of ice and snow in the region, and when freezing points are crossed, it can affect the whole region. Local warming trends in Nunavut have increased over the past 100 years. These changes influence the increase of storms. Precipitation has also increased due to warming. Scientists estimate that precipitation in the Arctic regions has increased 8% in the past 100 years. Isostatic rebound is happening in Nunavut, where large ice sheets are disappearing and therefore causing the land to rise. Nunavut's landmass is rising rapidly, causing sea levels to drop. Climate changes in the Arctic have also affected permafrost in Nunavut's region. The permafrost is thawing and weakening the ground. Another change in Nunavut has been the dramatic process of iceberg calving. Iceberg calving is a rapid breaking off and release of chunks of ice from icebergs. This can not only affect the ocean salinity, changes in runoff, and water levels, but also the quality of drinking water for the people of Nunavut. Arctic changes impact the communities and people of Nunavut. There is an increased risk of land travel. Recreational activities such as hunting, fishing, and ice fishing are also affected. Communities' food storage is also affected by permafrost. Meats are not as freshly preserved due to water temperatures. Nunavut's historical sites are harder to travel to. Cruise ships and different transportation via water have been affected as well. There are possible solutions that could help protect Nunavut and its people from Arctic climate change. The reduction of GHG emissions is one solution. Nunavut's people believe the most important solution to climate change is adaptive planning. By being flexible and adapting their way of living to the changes, it will help reduce the threat of Arctic climate change in Nunavut's region. Capstone Assignment 3. Ocean acidification has major impacts on oceans everywhere, especially the Caribbean. Ocean warming leads to several issues within marine environments, including sea level rise and ocean circulation. The Caribbean is so susceptible to ocean acidification due to its location to coastal zones. It is also highly susceptible due to the burning of fossil fuels and other human activities, which cause direct changes within the ocean's acidification. This is a threat because it can affect marine life, coastal reefs, and make coastal regions of the Caribbean more vulnerable to storm surges. Ocean acidification refers to the lowering of ocean pH levels. Seawater saturation in the Caribbean has decreased by approximately 3% each decade. Caribbean regions have also seen decreasing pH levels for the last 20 years. The rising seawater acidity is already affecting shellfish and sea corals in the Caribbean region, unable to build their shells. This ocean acidification has many effects on communities in the Caribbean. Communities of people rely on the ocean for food and their livelihoods. Jobs such as fishing and sailing are being affected. Overfishing and pollution are also big problems affecting Caribbean communities. Solutions are being worked on to figure out how to reduce ocean acidification in the Latin America and Caribbean regions. HSH Prince Albert II of Monaco attended a regional meeting of the Ocean Acidification International Reference User Group. Here, important leaders discussed the risks and possible solutions of ocean acidification. They discussed the vulnerability of marine life, temperatures in the oceans, and the complexities of cold water ecosystems. They then discussed how the region can cope with these issues, identifying funds for moving forward, an increase in scientific exploration of the region's problems, communication, and policy decisions. The meeting was funded by the Prince Albert II Foundation, and the members who attended will continue in the future to work on funding the restoration of the Caribbean region and work to stop ocean acidification. Capstone Assignment 4. Land cover is a budding problem in the world. Changes in land use and land cover by humans can result in physical changes such as land surface albedo, temperature, and greenhouse gas concentrations. The biggest threat of land cover is that soil and plants turn into a net for drawing carbon from the atmosphere. The Global Land Use and Land Cover Change has reported many studies that link land cover with climate change, natural disasters, soil erosion, deforestation, and land expansion. One place that is extremely susceptible to climate change due to land cover is northern China, specifically Inner Mongolia. Inner Mongolia is a susceptible region to land cover due to its many grasslands and vast plains. The annual precipitation is between 50 and 450 millimeters. Grassland was the major land use type of the region. However, since 1980, this grassland area has experienced forest degradation. The number of livestock has increased while the number of available areas has decreased. Since China is such an urbanized country and has so many issues with population control and pollution already, the fact that these grassland areas are decreasing is a major concern. Effects of land cover in China include the decreased vegetation, a decrease in biomass, cultivation, and overgrazing. The decrease of vegetation is a major problem in China due to the increasing population and constant need for food and resources. Although land coverage is a problem taking over our whole world, China has solutions and plans to help overcome it. Policies were made such as return grazing to grassland program, fencing grassland and moving users, and payments for environmental services. For some areas in northern China, fencing and free grazing are necessary. PES has been implemented in northern China since 2001 and has improved ecological restoration throughout the last decade. Important policies continue to be developed to protect the degradation of grasslands and help protect communities and vegetation in China. Capstone Assignment 5. Sea level rise is a serious issue all over the world, especially in cities in the United States. One of these cities that is greatly affected by the recent rise in sea level is New York City, New York. These rising sea levels can pose a threat on communities, ecosystems, and the economy. Another big threat caused by rising sea level is storm surges and flooding. Since 2000, flooding in New York increased by 247%. New York's drainage system can cause flooding as well. Seawater can get pushed into the pipes and flood out onto the streets. Hurricanes can be even more torrential and damaging in New York. New York is so vulnerable to this rising sea level and its major threats due to the slowing of the Gulf Stream and land sinkage. Sea level is rising about 1 inch every 7 to 8 years in New York. Scientists predict that within the next 14 to 15 years, sea level will have risen by 6 inches. Among the most vulnerable locations which scientists have made predictions for are Montauk, Port Jefferson, Kings Point, Bergen Point, and the Battery. Sea level rise has direct effects on New York's communities. Half of New York's residents are made up of these marine communities. With surging storms and rising sea levels, businesses are forced to shut down, causing unemployment and workers to have no jobs. Floods also cause expensive damages among the state. Public transportation is a main way of traveling and commuting among New Yorkers. Flooding and storm surges caused by these rising sea levels can affect public transportation to be shut down. This affects how people in these communities get around in their everyday lives. New York has spent over $4 billion on finding solutions to local sea level rise. New York City funded a $1 billion plan on how to handle flooding. Suffolk and Nassau counties also have plans for better sewer systems and seawalls. New York City specifically is building a $335 million seawall in Manhattan. Raising roads may also be a helpful solution to flooding and storm surges in NYC. Local communities and people can also help prevent the sea level rise and protect themselves by elevating their homes and buying flood insurance. Capstone Assignment 6. Mitigation and adaptation have been proven extremely relevant to climate change. Mitigation and mitigation strategies have been especially prominent in India and the Indian government. The mitigation of non-CO2 species poses a potential threat to the Indian community. They can provide short-term cooling benefits, but in the long run, they provide no stabilization. India is vulnerable to climate change mitigation because most of India's emissions come from energy and coal-based production, then industry, then agriculture. India needs to start using solar power, nuclear power, hydroelectric power, windmills, etc. to mitigate climate change. In 2000, carbon emissions in India were reduced by 18 million tons. 120 million more tons can potentially be achieved within the next decade. Climate change mitigation has a huge negative impact on the health of the population and communities of India. As India burns more fossil fuels, temperatures increase, and new diseases emerge. Cholera, diarrhea, malaria, dengue, and chikungunya have spread around Indian communities. There is polluted water, insanitary conditions, hunger, and malnutrition prominent to these communities. India does, however, have plans to mitigate climate change. Drip irrigation, aerobic cultivation, and researching different methods to further improve agriculture are all in India's future. Indian scientists are also trying to put a stop to stubble burning. Forestation and planting need to increase as well in order to bring down atmospheric CO2 levels.